Hi, this is Randy Randall of No Age and host of the podcast Hyphenate with Randy Randall. I want to welcome our newest sponsor of the show, DistroKid. DistroKid helps musicians get their music on all the major streaming platforms, and artists keep 100% of their royalties. Hyphenate listeners get 30% off at distrokid.com/VIP/hyphenate. Again, that's distrokid.com/VIP/HYPHENATE. Go get your music streaming everywhere now.
Our very first show was just Allison and me, and that was on Valentine's Day of 1991. And we played in Olympia with Bikini Kill and Some Velvet Sidewalk. And Toby texted me the other day. She's like, I just saw a video of this show. Like, it's bananas.
What's happening? Thank you so much for tuning in to Hyphenate with me, your host, Randy Randall. This is the podcast where I, myself, a multi-hyphenate, talk to other multi-hyphenates. And these multi-hyphenates can be people who have had a long career in which their journey has taken many twists and turns, or they're people who at any one singular time have engaged in more than one creative pursuit. These could be photographers that are also guitar players. These could be painters who are also drummers. These could be drummers who are also managers, run record labels, and all around, kick ass, which would describe Molly Neuman. You know her as drummer extraordinaire from the iconic Riot-Girl band Bratmobile, but she also ran Lookout Records, iconic Bay Area punk label, home to Green Day and many others, the luminaries in the Bay Area punk scene, as well as managing the Donnas, incredible band, and also now being the CMO, Chief Marketing Officer of Downtown Records, which she gets into and really, has such an insightful front row seat on the last 20 years of the recording industry. And I was really honored that Molly took the time to sit down and talk about all these hats, these many hats she's worn over the years, and just share her story. I mean, it's really is an inspirational story. To people everywhere. I mean, I've always felt lucky to count her as a friend. I met her years ago, I think, when there was a band featuring members of Bratmobile, Party Foul. I think they were not Party Foul. Party Foul was a different band that played The Smell. Party Line was a cool band. I remember we played a festival early on, the early days of No Age, and got to meet her through friends of friends, and just so cool. Just such an awesome legend, and really sweet, special person, as you will hear. And I want to thank DistroKid for sponsoring the show. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. And if you like the show, make sure to give us a review. Wherever you listen to us, there's usually a review function. If you have an extra second, it would really help get the word out. Also, just let your friends know. Tell other people, like, hey, I heard a good podcast. You might like it. Check it out. Word of mouth goes a long way. A little goes a long way, as they say. So let's get to it without further ado. Here is my conversation with Molly Neuman. Molly Neuman, thanks so much for jumping on Hyphenate. How are you doing?
Hi, Randy.
How's it?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I was going to call you neighbor when we first jumped on. Like, what's happening, neighbor?
We're pretty close.
Yeah.
I think LA Foothills neighbors, we can go for 25 miles.
For LA, this is close. For LA, under a half hour, under 10 miles, it's the neighborhood.
Well, I don't know about you, but one of the things that I love about where we live is we're above the cloud cover.
Yes.
So a lot of times in the morning when I'm heading down into LA, I go through 2 microclimates,
Oh
like
yeah.
the above the clouds and then below the clouds, and, like, today it was even raining when I
Yep.
got below the clouds. It's like, "This it's pretty cool."
I
I
did
like it.
I did the same thing. Yeah, I love that view coming down the 2 and you see the city. It's almost like the
Mhm.
Wizard of Oz, like downtown out on the horizon
Totally.
line. It's so fun. It's
Totally.
epic. It's an epic view to see.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I'm excited to have you on. I mean, you are 100 million% a hyphenate. We've known each other for over the years, and you have worn many hats. And one of the hats you recently
Yep.
put back on is drummer extraordinaire for the legendary Riot-Girl band Bratmobile. What is that like? How are these shows going, and what's that process
These
been
shows
like?
are going great,
Yeah.
honestly. Thank you for asking, and I do think I have multi hyphens in almost every direction of my life too. So there's
Yeah.
like multi hyphenate. I The shows are great. We played 2 last weekend, one kind of warm up show in Kingston, New York, and then one in Brooklyn. Um, and that was awesome. It was great. Like the Brooklyn show was, we were nervous, we were anxious, we were prepared, and it. I think and the audience was lovely, and our friends and family were there, as well as lots of new. I felt like new generation people. Like some kids came up to me that are in high school talking about their band, and um, it was just great.
How amazing, how fun. But you also have a day job in which what is
Yes.
the proper title? I want to call you boss, head boss lady of everything.
I'm the
Yeah.
chief marketing officer of Downtown Music, and Downtown Music is a company that has a number of different divisions, including publishing, Downtown Music Publishing and Song Trust, Fuga for digital distribution for labels and artists, and then our sort of higher touch artist and label services company under Downtown. We have a couple of other divisions in neighboring rights and royalty and financial services, and a couple of other things too. But distribution and publishing are the main ones, and then helping to market artists. But we also own CD Baby, which is the DIY direct artist platform for uh, people who want to get their music on any of the digital services primarily. So yeah, I'm in charge of telling that story, making sure that people understand that we are one group under Downtown, and we have a lot of different sort of areas that we focus on in music services. What's different about Downtown is we don't own anything, so we're not a label, we're not a owner of publishing rights. We only administer things. So that's a cool part of the industry that continues to grow, but it's also pretty complicated and requires sort of a different way of thinking and approaching things.
It's a
But it's cool.
service resource, for
Yes.
for
Yes.
bands
Yeah.
and labels big and small, and you're
Yeah.
all of the middleman in between stuff that can kind of help
Yes,
bands
every
and
middle
artists
person,
and labels.
every
Yeah.
every artist, size, type, profile. Like some of our clients are the estate of John Lennon, Yoko
I've heard of
Ono,
him.
and the estate
I've
of
heard of
John
him.
Lennon. Yeah,
Yeah.
like that's one that I can still kind of can't pinch myself that I get to kind of be associated with that. But then we work with hundreds of thousands of individual artists, and then lots of record companies and labels that we all know and work with too, and also in different ways. So some of them we just do distribution, some of them do have publishing that they work in, some of them do neighboring rights, which is the sort of performance royalties for recording. So
Hmm.
it's a zone that we don't have exactly in the US except for web and satellite radio. Like sound exchange royalties are the ones that are collected here for Sirius XM and Pandora
Oh my
web
God.
radio and things
Yeah.
like that. But it's not, they don't, like in other countries, if you if your music is played on the radio, you have a performance royalty for the recording. We don't have that here.
Oh,
So it's,
interesting.
so we don't have the radio section of it. And it's just an example of how wonky and painful some of these things are to manage and certainly to understand. And because there are so many more people making music of all sort of levels and levels of interest and passion and, professionalism, it's kind of crazy how hard it is to make this accessible. as in terms of like just the information of how things work.
Yeah.
So that's another part of kind of things that I focus on.
Decluttering some of the messaging and sort of what, demystifying some of it, as well as just simplifying. Like, there's a million people making music, and there's a million new ways of how to listen to music, which is what I mean. You come from one side of the fence, and I often find myself on this podcast being an old man shaking my fist like, back in my day. But the reality is, it's a lot of fun. I mean, there's the punk ethos of start your own band, and punk is anything you make
Yeah.
it. I think it really lives in today's culture. If you see this happening, everybody's got GarageBand on their computers, and they
Yeah.
can make a great record and get their message out. And I think that idea of being heard and having options for having your voice heard is more likely
Yeah.
to
I
happen
mean,
now than it's ever been in the history of music.
it's so wild. So we're navigating so many different things, right? We're navigating how easy it is to make music on your phone,
Hmm.
even, or certainly on your laptop or desktop, and then record it, mix it, master it, upload it, promote it. Like it's not, the barriers to entry are really really small.
Yeah.
The audience is bigger, but there's also so many more people making it. Like, what's the time ratio of like that you could that actually makes this work, right? Because that's the other thing you read about in music news, industry news, and things like that, where it's how much how many more recordings are uploaded every day, like over 100,000. And then we get the statistics about how little engagement there is for 80-90% of the music. So you're talking about, how do you, like, what's the actual thing we're driving towards? We want to make more people have the opportunity. We also want to have all generations enjoy it at some way, or your small community.
Yeah.
Like, so that's the other thing. Like, it's totally fine in my view if your community of 1 or 5 or 100 is all that you're really kind of focused on, as long as but we have to kind of manage the royalties, and it's still the infrastructure to
Hmm.
manage these sorts of things. Like, I was thinking about how much business is required of every sort of level of music artist, because even if you want to use a platform like CD Baby, you have to have a bank account, you have to have a tax ID, or some representation of
Hmm.
representation, um, that validates you.
You're an entity.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
you're an entity,
Yeah.
and then if you're making $1 a week or $1 a year, that's where, like, what how
Yeah.
does that really work?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think it's an interesting place, and but it's not just music. I think music has really been the
No,
forefront
for sure.
of the streaming and kind of the media, the digitization of media. That I think film and TV and literary. It's all in the same wave of progression. I
Media
think music
creativity, yeah.
has kind of become the test case for a lot of what new distribution models and all this kind of we're it's hitting us first, and we're for good and bad is happening both ways of the I think for whatever reason. I think it's just, but also I think it speaks to how personal music is, and how
Hmm.
quick and facile music is as a messaging system. That what I always loved as a musician, and I'm sure you had this experience as well, is you could think of a song that morning or that that Wednesday, and then play it that weekend with your band, and it's great
Yeah.
because was it good or not, and you can adjust it, and then you're going to play the next night, and now you can change the song, and you can adjust it just right. And also, when you love a song, they're talking directly to you. You have that one-to-one
Yeah.
relationship with film, and you can listen to it ad nauseum, as we know, right? You have your favorite record that you've heard, a million times, and you can love a film, but if films are communal experiences, or TV shows, TV's a little different because they come into your house, but film, that idea
Yeah.
of like, you experience it with the community. The comedies are funnier when a big group, when everyone's laughing, and the scares are scarier when a big group, when everybody's screaming. You need that kind of
Yeah.
socialization around film, and then once you've seen it. It does, and you lived in
Yeah.
your memory, and you can replay it, and you can talk with your friends about it,
It's, I mean,
but you
all of
don't
these
watch it as many times.
experiences, when you look,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, when you look at it that way, and you think about like reading, or you think about art, you think about film, and think about music, like, you know, thankfully, there are all different kinds of experiences and, ways that you can connect with it. Probably, this is me with not being a psychologist, anthropologist, or any kind of anything. The fact that our lives are so concentrated in this device in our hands now,
Mm-hmm.
that we're trying to, you know, have some psychological, you know, control over, that all of us are, pretty much being, you know, you're beaten over the heads with like our addiction or our comfort, or, and I mean,
Mm-hmm.
but it's so hard because you literally have everything, um right there. And for me, because in my day job, like, we're a company that has offices around the world. I work with a lot of people in Europe. I live in California. That's not that convenient for everybody. So it means I have to wake up a little earlier and be available on that side of the day. And that means I kind of have to look at my stupid phone right away when I wake up. And I don't love that. I've tried all sorts of different, like, life hacks to fix it, but it seems like I usually have something to do as soon as I wake up, and it doesn't matter if it's 4 or 5. That
Mm-hmm.
sucks. I
Mm-hmm.
wish it were different, but maybe that'll change someday. But right
That's
now, I can live with it, because the nice thing about being in California is, it does quiet down towards the end of the day, and so for our family, we have a little bit more time together than we did when we were living in New York, where a lot of that stuff kind of bled into the evening.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I love that.
Yep. Yeah, my wife has her team is mostly in New York, but with some bleed over into Paris and and
Hmm.
other places. So it's always she's online pretty quick, but it's nice. I get to do all the breakfasts, and she'll still come out and comb the kids' hair because she knows I don't know how to do that. She'll give them one last look before they get out the door, like why?
She'll give
Yeah,
the zone of approval.
yeah.
Well, yeah, that's
It's,
funny. And everybody complains about LA, about driving in traffic, and certainly, we do that a lot more than we had in New York. But if for me, the time that I have, like, taking my kid to school is pretty fun.
mhm.
Like, it gives us a little focused quality time together, and I enjoy it. It's like, even today, she's after a while, it's usually like 5 minutes before I'm dropping her off. She's like, "Oh, let me tell you about this thing or the other thing." So,
Oh
it
yeah.
gives us a little space,
Yep.
that might not even, like, when I get home and she gets home, we might all go to our corners just to decompress from whatever, instead of
Hmm.
having, like, let's have a conversation. What did you get up to today? You know what I mean? So,
Oh yeah. I love That's one of
you
my
take
favorite
what you can get.
questions. Yeah.
Modern life is challenging.
Yep.
Yeah.
I love asking my oldest son, like, so what's the news? What's the news today? What's happening on the playground? And if I catch him just right, just the right
You get
time, I can get the good one. Well, so and so's got a crush on so and this one said to that one, and I'm like, all right, good. And then later, my wife will ask something just 10 minutes later after we get home, and shoes are off and he's ready to go for Fortnite or something. And then like, what happened today? Like, nothing. I don't know. What'd you do? I'm like, oh, you gotta.
Right.
There's that
Yeah.
sweet spot where they're still willing to tell you something. I'm like, okay, I'll let her know later. It's like,
Exactly, and you
well,
ask, and the angle it in the right way, right? So, but yeah, it's fun, like, doing, part of what has been so rewarding about playing again. First of all, like, living here in LA, Allison was living here for almost 10 years before we moved, so it was always like in the pro column that, she was going to be here, just we've been friends since we met in the dorms
oh
in
my god,
college 30 plus years ago. So,
yes,
she's like one of the most important people in my life anyway. But then, you know, to to have the opportunity, and the interest, in us performing again, and to have the ability to have my kid be a part of it, kind of when she's becoming interested in music or interested in creativity or what her own passions are, and kind of, be there with me, is also kind of amazing. And
it's so
so
cool.
that's been great. And then the other part of, where it, I think, hyphenates a little bit too, is because my work is so focused on artists and opportunity for a, creative class of people, and hoping to see more women in all aspects of, like writing, recording, producing, engineering, mastering, the work to do to release it as well as performing. Um, it's really kind of awesome to have a fresh perspective on how easy and hard it is. I mean, you guys have been playing throughout, so you've been doing it solo, you do it with Dean, like you have all of the perspective too, but it's nice to have like a little real life case study.
Right. Oh, yeah. And you get to see, yeah, what the audiences are like, what the splits are like, what the venues are like, kind of get a taste of that. Too. So when you do have to go talk to an artist, you can say, yeah, you're not alone. Things are different.
It's
And it's
hard,
hard.
man. I
Yeah.
mean, it's like it's a lot of details. And the
Yeah.
the thing that the industry loves to do is simplify. And I'll admit, like part of my life's work is to try to simplify some of this stuff in any way possible. But to simplify what it requires to be an artist now, of any
Mm.
level, literally, like even if if you're fortunate enough to have anybody show up at your shows, the expectation that you're engaging with them in social media, in real life, with the venues, with the business, with the entire rights structure of how to earn and collect and all of that stuff, and still make really good music, or even play it if you're not writing it. Like we're not writing new songs right now. I mean, I don't, that's not even something we've ever discussed. Like there's like, we're good. We have enough to go with
Yeah.
for now. But it's tremendous. And people sort of like, people who live in mansions and in corner offices are like, oh, everybody's going to make their money from live. Don't worry about streaming. Or, it's like, that's a lie.
Yeah.
That's just a joke, right? Like
Yep.
where did that happen? So,
That's so funny.
yeah, having a little bit more credibility, I guess.
I just saw a meme about that. Yeah, where it's like the record companies say, "Oh, well, you're gonna make all your money live. We don't got to pay you anything." And then the live people are like, "Oh, we're making all your money on the records. We don't have to pay you anything." And it's like, really, to be an artist now in 2024, it's really, again, musicians as the forefront. They're, kind of the first head of the spear of whatever financial and new technology and new sort of way of, whatever the wave that's coming. I've seen
Yeah.
artists kind of get the first push on it, or the first taste of that. Like, oh, this is dark. If this is going to keep happening to everybody, where, it's going to split people really down the middle.
Well, I mean, I think your band and ours and our sort of community never, I don't think like financial, like, results, rewards were the motivator for sure. Right.
Sure.
So obviously we have to spend money to do any of the stuff. And so you want to make sure that you're getting what you're due. That's critical. But it's interesting to think about, I don't know. I mean, I wanted to be an actor when I went to college. Like that was my first sort of artistic ambition. And I quickly kind of pivoted into music and filmmaking. And because there's no, like, everyone knows how hard it is to be an actor, and you just like, you kind of realize like it is a dream that may totally fail. And you're going to have something to, like, having something to fall back on is like kind of like a mantra of, if, oh, you think you're going to be an actor or whatever. So like, I always had that in my head. And it's early in having a band and, even like, and touring and making records, I realized I needed a job. And that's how I got into working at the record company at Lookout. And sort of like, it felt like, oh, I can do these things. Like they're complementary. It's not like they're completely out of the, out of left field. But that was always my approach. I know it's not that way for a lot of people. I always kind of figured that's my backup, and then it became my primary part of work. And I have had thoughts over the years of what if that had been reversed? Like I worked the warehouse instead and just toured instead of trying to do the more like forward facing business side of the music industry. Like, would I have been a better drummer? Would I have had more like success as an artist? I don't know. Like, I'll never know.
Yeah.
But I'm grateful that I've had a little bit of a taste of both things in a way.
But I think your personality just led you to that thing of like I know how to be the boss. That's how, or I know how to fix it. I could never imagine you just being in the warehouse. Like, wait, there's a better way to do this. Everybody out of my way. I have this. Let me
Oh my
fix
God,
this.
you're so funny. That is a very nice compliment. But yeah, I mean, it's funny because my job at Lookout was, I started working there the year that Dookie came out.
Oh my God.
And
I don't want to interrupt you, but I'm sorry. I'm thinking like I normally I would start like, oh, what's your biography? But I think because we've known each other, we just jumped right into all kinds of fun stuff. Like I kind of
right.
I want to hear the Green Day story. I want to get into that part of it. But I want to. Where did you grow up? And where did you first start playing music?
I grew up in DC.
Okay, so tell me about that. What were your parents doing? Siblings,
so
the whole thing.
I grew up. Yeah, I grew up in DC. My dad and my stepmom had my first sibling when I was 17, so I was mostly an only child. My dad worked in politics, and my dad's from California, Northern California, and so I traveled back and forth a lot, like for holidays and stuff, to see my cousins because we didn't really have family in the area. And I was into music early on, but I didn't really aspire to be a musician exactly. Though, like when I went to college, my summer job money, I bought an acoustic guitar and I took that with me, like very stereotypical kind of scenario. I took that with me to college.
Where'd you go to college?
I was into like Tracy Chapman. I was into Indigo Girls. I was into REM.
So cool.
So like rock, folk stuff was part of what I was into. And then I met Allison in the dorms. Like she was literally my next door neighbor.
And what college was this?
From Olympia.
This was Evergreen?
University of Oregon.
Oh no, University of Oregon. Okay.
We started at Oregon and then we transferred because she's from Olympia, and we ended up, so part of our journey together, we ended up going back and forth to shows all the time to Olympia, and started our band kind of, after neither of us really played anything yet, but we had this idea, and we were really into the bands that were on K that were, sonically simplistic, I guess. Like you would argue that they're like, rudimentary or something, because it was one acoustic guitar playing a riff with, maybe a drum or maybe just a tambourine and a voice, like it was so minimalist, but powerful. And that really kind of, inspired us and gave us the sort of, belief that we had, there's nothing stopping us. And there certainly weren't enough women doing anything. And that was part of what we were studying in college and part of the energy of the time, the activism and, sort of political awareness. So we started our band and had a fanzine and things like that. And then, that was like, the early 90s. And so the bands that we would like go to Olympia to see were Nirvana and Melvins and Beat Happening. And that's what, was like tremendously exciting. And then Bikini Kill started and we started, and that, having an active commitment to being women in bands and supporting women in bands and hoping to inspire more women to be in bands was kind of all happening at once. And that became, what sparked Riot-Girl. And so like we did end up moving to Olympia, and I graduated from Evergreen, and then moved to the Bay Area and kept touring. And at that point I was still in Bratmobile, but also we had started a band. Toby, Kathy, and Bill from Bikini Kill and I were in a band called the Front Bees, and we toured a little bit. And I was also playing drums for Lois, who was an artist on K. Mm-hmm. And so like there was a year where my first year out of college, I toured with all three bands, and it was really chaotic and not very healthy. And like I got sick and sort of like figured at that point, like after that year, I was like, I'm going to take a break. And Bratmobile stopped playing. I got a regular job, and then that was 94. So that was, Dookie came
Wow.
out in January, and my future ex-husband,
Yeah.
became then boyfriend, future ex-husband, was working at Lookout, and we ended up, and so they kind of just had, not just the Green Day catalog that was selling so many records, but um, all the other artists were selling a lot too, but they needed more. So I came in, into a room like a quarter of this one that I'm in, which is like my office practice area. And, it was a mess, and they had not been doing any promotion. So all the bands were kind of like, hey, Green Day used to open for me. Like, what, why are they so, I mean, it
Yeah.
wasn't that bad, but it was like, there was a little bit of, let's give them some support. Let's get them on the road. So I did like press and radio and tour promotion. And that is kind of my first industry job.
And at
I
that
want to
point,
say I made like $400 a month or
oh my
something
God.
crazy. Like, I don't
Yeah.
even know like physically how that worked.
But but at that point, Lookout had Kerplunk and like the first 7 inches and stuff. But was Dookie like a license, or was there still the Lookout stuff? Some part? No, it
Mm-mm.
was gone by that point. It wasn't
No, it
There
just
wasn't
was
a
the
never mind.
catalog that
Good.
took off. There's
Got
two
it. Got
albums
it.
before Dookie, and um but it was just bananas. I mean,
Yeah.
they were like I started working there in September of 94, so that was right after Woodstock.
Wow.
They were about to do a big, not arena tour, but like big theaters, I guess, that fall.
And Lookout was sort of the
And
focal center, sort of like a Sub Pop was, just 4 years earlier, or that idea that
right.
Lookout
I mean,
and Bay
and so
Area,
and at that
Rancid,
time,
everything else happening. Yeah.
totally. Like Rancid's first 7 inch had been on Lookout before I worked there. They were signed to Epitaph. Um, Epitaph was having the same thing with Offspring shortly. I can't remember the exact timing when that record came out, but like around the same time,
Hmm.
certainly. I mean, 94 is when Kurt died, so it's not, that like Nirvana had already exploded into the stratosphere. But I think everything was starting, like all the independent, two major artists were kind of the ones that had hits to transcend things outside of the sort of independent circuit. Were starting to do that. And so, it was pretty wild. And obviously people were buying. So the business side, and I talk about this sometimes when I'm in like a more formal, talk environment. It's, CDs were high margin
Oh my God.
items,
Yeah.
retailing for between 13 and $20, but it was $3 to make them. Right. So the industry was not in the proper scale.
Yeah.
It was, and a lot of the records that we're selling were still things that had been in vinyl only, at one point, or tape only, and then now we're in the new format, so it's like a reissue into a CD. And so, all sorts of weird economic things that preceded file sharing. But you really do, if you think about it in those ways. And I know there's lots of writing and analysis of this, but I mean, it's just always relevant. I think that part of the you know, response was to like, I want this for free. It's like, I already have it. I just want it in this new portable way. I bought it. Like there was a rationale to what appeared to be theft to some, right?
Mhm.
To the powers that be, the power structure.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Yeah, there was a lot
so
of gouging kind of in that late 90s sort of run of things of like, I'm buying this
yeah,
for the
and
third or
there's
fourth
lots of
time. And
charts that you can look at that, kind of with the trends, and then it falls off a cliff at the end of the 90s. And but that was another kind of zone of we were adopting a more digital experience for you know accessing music, and these new bands and new communities were starting up, that I think supported the a little bit more of that sort of independent world, and was becoming popular. So that's like great when the Strokes and the Hives and all of those sorts of bands were becoming, and probably right before No Age was starting,
yeah,
right? Like
yep.
when did your first record come out?
2007 was the first full length.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
But you had your other bands and you were like
Yeah.
figuring it your way. And,
Yep.
um,
Well, well, I want to ask also too, but I know you kind of went past the formation of Bratmobile and Bikini Kill and even your DC connection. I mean, were you flying
mhm.
back and forth? I know this was something that kind of as this a few years. I was the generation right below, so I've studied it in almost in that kind of in that fanzine sort of way.
Yeah.
But like, how did you feel that connection between what was going on in DC and the DC music scene and the
Yeah.
Olympia
I mean,
music scene, the
it
Revolution
was
Summer, that whole
actually,
yeah.
yeah, that was not, I mean, that's also like a little like that happened, when I was in high school. So it wasn't my
Okay.
scene, that was taking place. I had like in ninth grade, I had a tape that had a Write the Spring song on it, and I loved it. Like I definitely felt super excited. I know, it's got to be here somewhere. Like I'm sure I'll unearth it someday. But I went to an international school, and one of the guys, I had two friends who were in the grade above me, and one of them made a tape for my best friend, and maybe she had it, but anyway, they made a tape for us that we were, I guess, supposed to share. I can't remember if that's how it went down, or he just made it for me, but it had like a Write the Spring song on it, and I was like, oh my god, this is so good, and other like replacement songs, and things that were kind of like trying to educate the grade below, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Literally like
Here,
that
check
generational
this
gap,
out. Yeah, here's what's happening.
right?
Yeah.
But so I was more aware. I was aware of the DC punk scene, but I wasn't like going to shows myself yet. I didn't have
Okay.
any friends that were that as interested, or so we didn't. I didn't really get into or become part of that community until I moved to the West Coast. And part of how that happened was Fugazi's 1990 tour, which I think was Repeater. Um, they played in Eugene, where we went to school, and they played with Beat Happening. And so Beat Happening was our favorite band. And I liked Fugazi, but like it was, you know, so it was like kind of that's where I met the my future good friends in that band. And then when I would go home for breaks. So like a couple weeks after that show, I went back to DC and they played like their homecoming show from that tour. So then I was like, oh hey, remember I met you in Olympia or whatever, and then got to know those people. And then Aaron, who plays guitar with us for all of our records and has been in our band throughout, but is not really available to play with us right now. Uh, was living in Maryland. And so she and I got to know each other and became kind of like pen pals. And so when we started our band, our very first show was just Allison and me. And that was on Valentine's Day of 1991. And we played in Olympia with Bikini Kill and Some Velvet Sidewalk. And Toby texted me the other day. She's like, I just saw a video of this show. Like, it's bananas.
Wow. What was it a
And
house show? What was the venue?
no, it was at a place called the Surf Club.
Okay.
It was like a real show with a real poster, and uh and we played 5 songs, but it was like me playing guitar and Allison singing, me playing drums and Allison singing on some, and then there was like one song that she played guitar and I played and sang and I played drums. Like she's not a multi-instrumentalist. I think she'll be the first to admit. So then when we were going home for spring break that year, my brother, Andy, the younger of my two brothers, was born. He was born in February. So we were going home for like spring break so I could meet him for the first time. And Allison came, and then we played, and I can't remember if she had come the year before too. I think she had. I think it was the second spring break she had come home with me. And but this time we knew Aaron and we had songs and we're like, hey, let's jam. And so we played music, and Christina Bellotti played with us a little bit too, because I was playing guitar mostly and she was the drummer. And that was like the idea, like, oh, hey, this could be cool. And when we got back for the summer, um, to actually like be the band, she had other stuff going on. So she's like, I can't really do this. And we are like, oh, okay, shoot, we have a show. What are we gonna do? And so because Aaron was the guitar player and we didn't really need 2 guitar players, I just switched to drums. And that's when we started like writing more songs, and we recorded our first 7-inch that summer and played the International Pop Underground Convention
In
that
Olympia.
summer
Yeah.
in Olympia.
Wow.
And I was still finishing school. I think I had another semester of Evergreen. Um, was that all right? Or was it? No, I was just starting at Evergreen then. Sorry.
Wow.
So I did 2 years there, and yeah, it was a lot of and so we did go back and forth, but it was, like we started when Allison and I were in college in Eugene. Like credit card companies are very predatory, and
Oh
they
yeah.
like go to college campuses and they're like, hey, open your first account, you got to build your credit. And so we both opened accounts and got 2 plane tickets each as part of the like bonus program. It was like a companion ticket, so something like you had to fly with someone. So that was pretty much the first part of our band starting too, to kind of fly back and forth to the East Coast for cheap, um, and then stay with friends. And some of the next summer that we lived in DC together. I mean, you see some pictures of Allison, and she's like, we were talking about the other day. She's like, there was no food. Like we just weren't eating. Like I was like, I would bring her over to my parents' house and like feed her.
Mm-hmm.
We would maybe go to the diner and split hash browns. Like it was a bleak situation.
Oh yeah.
But from that, so the art was created.
I look back at photos of the dumpster diving, no cars, riding bicycles all days, and man, we were skinny.
No,
That
I
was a
know,
skinny
man.
crew.
I mean, I had one job where I worked at a biotech company as a receptionist, and um, but we were right next to a Noah's Bagels, like the
Oh yeah.
original main plant in Emeryville, and they would always dump their bagels, and I like
Yep.
looked out the window from my office, and I was like, "Oh, hey, friends!" Like,
You get
like
those.
we're on our way home. Like we always go by and like
Yeah.
see these huge bags of bagels. So
You could put those in the freezer. Those will last weeks. Those are good.
I know, but it's funny. Like people now, because of germ phobia, and wisely so, right? Like that life is disgusting. Um, that would be, I don't
I
see
think it
how
was a form of
flying as much.
penicillin. I think it improved. I think all the mold probably helped
I
our
tend to
gut
believe
biome. We probably were stronger because of it. Is what I'm going to go with.
I believe in that myself, but I think it's a harder
I
sell.
would imagine. Well, I wouldn't recommend it, but again, it's now as parents, it's I think so much.
Right.
My wife and I have just been talking about this, just how important, that you don't want to deprive your kids of struggling and finding that independence on their own, because they're not going to find it if we're always there to offer the hand. I mean, you want to obviously help
It's
your children. You don't want to hurt them or put them in harm's way. However, a little bit of resistance will cause them to build up those muscles in all shapes and
It's
forms,
so
right?
hard.
Yeah.
It's so hard. I mean, it's the uh, it's a different. I'm not going to say it's like a new level. It's probably always been the same level of toxicity, but it's a new dimension, and the things that kids need to navigate now
It's true. It's a different
are it
world.
is
Yeah.
it's really intense. And I mean, we having preteens like we both do, thinking about what they how to prepare them to be strong enough to stick up for themselves and not be crushed by all the pain. It's like
Yeah.
I
But that's
I'm
yeah, I was just joking with somebody on here because our son was kind of having this feeling, these some big emotions, and I was like, you know what, that's what emo is for. Like I think I made the joke. I was like, that's what Bright Eyes is for. I have a Cure record he can borrow. I have some Smiths comps. He's gonna get
But
through it.
it's dad, I mean,
No,
the thing
he'll
that's
have to
hard for
find
you
that
and me to
version.
remember
My Chemical Romance or
is,
whatever the thing he loves. Machine Gun Kelly,
yeah, and
whatever
it's
that
also
is.
like, sure, dad, you tell me what your version of what this is. And I mean,
You just don't understand.
it's wild.
Yeah.
It's wild.
But they have to find that. But again, that's the kind of thing. It's like it's not prescriptive. Like I can't tell him how to go through his first heartbreak. He's gonna have to find whatever that song is that he can write in his journal, and dot it with the tears, because that's just what being a teenager is, man. That's what it is.
Yeah.
You got to go through it. But so drums was sort of a necessity. It was something that wasn't something you studied. It wasn't something you were looking to get into. It was just something that you needed a drummer.
Yeah. Yeah, I had so I mentioned I had my acoustic guitar that I took to college, and then at some point I traded it in for a Fender Music Master, which is a 3/4. Um,
You still have
can I
it?
grab it?
Yeah. Oh my
Actually,
God. Yes.
it's right here. Um, it's a 3/4 version of a Mustang.
Oh
I know I have
yes.
it
Oh my
blurred,
God. Look
but
at
it
that.
just has the one pickup.
The Pelham Blue.
So this was,
That's
yeah, and it was like
amazing.
the Fender Blue. It's
That's
really, and this, yeah, I mean, I guess this is worth a lot of money now, but it was it was $250 when I got
incredible.
it,
Did Kurt ever try
and
to buy it from you?
nobody ever tried to buy that from me.
Yeah.
John Theodore tried to buy my red Vistolite drum
Oh,
set
that makes
that
sense. Yeah.
you probably saw at
Yeah.
Kindo's studio for all those years, but I was like, I'm not ready to give it up, John. And I'm glad I didn't,
Yeah.
because I have played it now. But uh, I was learning. So like I switched to electric guitar, and I was like, working on chords and working on riffs and just trying to come up with stuff. But I could tell like it wasn't super natural to me. It wasn't. And I still now, like, I'm like, these are not that complicated things I'm playing, but they do not sound that good to me. Like, the intention sounds good. So when someone else plays it, who's
Oh, I
like an
see.
actual guitar player, I'm like, oh yeah, good. Okay. I was right. Like, that's a decent riff, but it's not my skill. So when we did need that, it did feel pretty natural. Um, and, and I was, I was never, and I still remain not like a flashy drummer. It's trying to find, I always sound super dorky, I think, when I'm trying to talk about my what I think my style is, but it's, just trying to kind of be what's needed and not overplay. But when I did, I had a band eventually with guys, and who, play totally different than the way Aaron had played, and I had to like kind of push into a different zone of trying to be a little bit more technical with what was happening there, and that was helpful, and I feel like that has been, probably, again, if I had tried to be more of a consistent musician, like most things, if you practice at them, you can get better. And, um, so it's fine that I'm doing some of that now, it's like, never give up.
Yeah, that's incredible. Um, well, I'm so excited. I mean, there's more to the story. So from Lookout Records, what happens next? There's band management. There's a whole other
Yeah,
kind of work.
so part of, what happened was, as a couple of our bands started to get more popular on Lookout, and one of them was called the Donnas, and they were four girls finishing high school, and we signed them. Um and so, as they became more popular, I did see it as a chance to kind of, oh, well, some of the reasons our band had struggles was we just didn't have anyone to give us any guidance or support. Having a manager is obviously not a new concept for music, but for women, for women playing together at such a young age, um, and having so much interest, I felt like I had things that were related to that. Like, our band certainly never had the same commercial opportunities that theirs did, but we had a media, interest, and we had things that we had to navigate, and then we had the personal relationships part to navigate. And so I wanted, and I was pleased that they, appreciated that I might be helpful in working with them more closely when it kind of felt like they needed a different record company in a different situation. And they ended up signing to Atlantic, and that gave me the chance to basically, for a couple of years, just travel with them all around the world. And that was also really instructive in, a different side of the music industry that I had not, had to work in, radio, TV, international, things like that. And that was helpful. And I mean, and then because of those things that we were describing, like the sort of economic realities of the industry, it was weird timing because they ended up selling, I think, the first record, maybe 500,000
Wow.
on Atlantic. And then getting ready for the second one, I don't know, there's more pressure, there's more expectation. They did some collaborating on writing with other people. They did some we had a different kind of producer that we ended up working with, and then we had injuries,
Mm.
and we had you know disc where there was like a new format that the industry was trying to throw at the universe called the dual disc. I don't know if you ever heard of this, but it's
No.
basically a one side is the CD and the other side is the DVD.
Oh God. Yeah.
And um it was like trying to manifest a new format that would, you know, tap into, so you could sell it at a higher price,
Hmm.
and you could,
It's like the
and
5.1 nonsense they try to do and
mhm,
all these other kind of
mhm.
things. Yeah. Yeah.
I think there was a mix in 5.1 on the audio side, maybe too. Like it
Mm.
was like
Oh,
all,
yeah.
kitchen sink. Oh, by the way, when you manufactured 50,000 of them for the release, like there was a glitch. And they all had to be recalled.
Oh.
And it was a disaster. So this was the second album, which was really good and had really good songs on it and has really good production and had really great videos. And but the timing is so, everything's so finicky, and it just didn't have the success that all of us wanted. And they toured, and they worked hard, and they did what was asked for them, but they were exhausted, and they were not pleased with some of the team that's trying to figure out what it was, because nobody really had the crystal ball of like what they needed to do. And um and so they ended up pausing for a little while, but kind of starting. They started their own record company, and at that point, I had already moved to New York and was looking at like a different phase of life. And I got a job, and um, kind of got into digital music. So I worked at a company called eMusic for a number of years, and then a company called Rhapsody, and which is now Napster, the like official version. And yeah, so I have had a job in almost every part of the music industry. I've never been a promoter or a booking agent, um, and that I think that's very hard work, and I
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
like
I was
okay
gonna
with
say,
that.
yeah, that's a whole different kind of ball of wax.
Yeah.
But well, I mean, you really a front seat to, I mean, the fourth, fifth revolution of this music format and everything. Like you say, I mean, I think you can kind of, in hindsight, see some of those trends and sort of what worked and what didn't work, and how we, if anyone were to know why we are where we are now, you would know, from the independents to the majors, and from, greedy, sort of, or not, maybe greedy is not the right word, but like opportunistic,
Yeah.
selling formats, to then the bottom falling out of selling anything at all, to then, you know what I
Well, I
mean?
think that's
Seeing it
why
all.
I've
Yep.
maintained a bit of skepticism about every new flashy toy that comes around. That
Hmm.
a couple of years ago, and I mean, we,
Oh yeah.
talked
NFTs and
about NFTs
yeah.
and Web3, and um, not that those aren't actually really good ideas for different ways that you're managing someone's career or audience. But it's, I think we're all desperate not to have that cliff that happened at the end of 2000s. So when something new comes along, a lot more people are open to it. They're open to discussing it, but they're also like, my perception is that they're immediate experts.
Mm.
And like, and I'm not, this isn't like what,
Oh yeah.
what we were talking about with NFTs. This is like more like, oh no, are we all supposed to be AI experts right now?
Yeah.
Like, how is that possible? We don't know
It-
what we're talking about.
yeah.
Um, and so it's, I talk about, front porch, fist in the air. I'm not like trying to be confrontational about it, but I am like, well, we should be ready, we should be open, we should be learning, we should be, testing. But people still love to create, play and listen to live music and recordings. Um, if robots help us make them better or make any of that experience better, I have no problem with that. But I'm not going to write off the core part of what we've been all doing for all these years that seems to be still pretty valuable. And,
Meaning writing
not
music.
one,
Yeah, you don't want to have robots
yeah,
writing robot music for robot critics to review for other robots to read. And yeah, no, I
that
think yeah.
it's like, you know,
Yeah, yeah. I think it's interesting too. I think with it's interesting you kind of refer to like the cliff of the early aughts. I think there was kind of a cultural um uh resentment, you know what I mean, from the CD age and how many times you're going to buy the CD and also CD, it was just like I remember going to Blockbuster Music and a $25 CD for 12 songs. You're like, wow,
right,
okay. And
right.
so I mean there was the fatigue of that sort of stuff, but there was also a platform. You had things, you had Steve Jobs, and his kind of vision of what technology could, how it could revolutionize, the personal home computer, having gone through that and seen that and the software and how that worked, and then introducing the iPod, really putting out a platform,
Yeah,
for this more or less illegal, file sharing culture that was existing. It's like, well,
I
where
know.
where are you going to get this thing? Like, I don't know. We have a store. Like, if anybody else puts stolen products on, we're just selling the player. We're not, whatever you
But
do with it, it just
it's,
all worked out in just the right
and
way.
I
That
mean, this stuff,
yeah.
and so, eMusic being like the indie focused competitor to iTunes or, Option,
Mm-hmm.
probably not really a competitor, let's be real. But, didn't have DRM. You could port your, downloads, but they were new recordings. It was, had an editorial focus. And all of, I think one of the things that I'm grateful about in my journey is like, I've worked at a lot of places, or I've done work that is not necessarily the most popular, the number one store, the number one, but it's always gives you kind of an appreciation for that there is more than one way to do things.
Mm-hmm.
And if you, I think what's kind of bummed me out all throughout this stuff is like, we adopted as a sort of music industry support for Spotify like very, very quickly. Like it was a cool product. It was easy, it was like relatively cheap, and they were clever, before all of the sort of like massive algorithmic, dominance, right? Like just people thought it was cool. So like, oh, it's a new thing, new shiny toy, let me get on it. And like no qualifying questions, like what about, so when you try to spin up something that might be more focused on a genre, like some people I know tried to do a streaming service, it's called Gimme Radio, and they did it for like a metal one and a country one, but it's not as convenient, right? Like you can get your metal and country on all the other platforms and find your zone. It's just,
Mm.
I'm not really sure where I'm headed with this, except
Yeah.
for like I do lament how hard it is to have multiple sort of um, experiences in music. So
Well, I
I
think the
know
one good thing.
we could talk for
Of course,
hours,
of course.
Randy.
Yeah, well, no, I think my feeling about that, and and we'll start circling around, but it does feel like the one good thing with music, more than any other kind of media format, is that it's always changing, and so the fact that we're in this streaming sort of uh desert, at least to say a financial chokehold on the creatives, in a streaming way, it can't last forever. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to get better, but whatever whatever exists now, what I mean. There's never been really a lasting format change, and it really does feel like it is a part of the design of music distribution to have radical bubbles and bursts, similar to like a financial industry. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's designed within our
Right.
financial system to go crazy and then to fail, then go crazy, like
Yeah.
going crazy meaning going really high numbers, and then it fails. The rise and fall, the
Yeah.
bears and bulls and of it all. And I think
Yeah.
the music distribution industry, if you look at the history of it all, then it's, through the mafia ties and through the jukeboxes and the payola and the
Yep.
radio and everything else. It was never a fair game. It was never a straight game. It was always rigged, and there was always levers to be pulled, and you know what I mean. It was, and not to,
Yeah. And now what you're adding into the mix is what we started with, which is the barrier to entry has been removed.
Mhm.
So you can, while those levers and those sort of silos exist in less probably overtly um, Rico way, there's a lot more people doing it, and so that's I think it's easy to point fingers at like a bad intention or a global, multinational company who might, not be operating in the same value system of, the punk underground. And, I think it's, it's challenging to try to put it into something that's like, it's a black and white problem
Mhm.
because it's not cheap to operate the infrastructure to support like the platform that we run, CD Baby, for example.
Yeah.
And it's not, and it's, and to, have this in all of this, and never ending catalog for, that you can experience within 30 seconds on your phone. It also requires investment in infrastructure, but it also requires the art. So how do you find a way to kind of keep that in balance so that it doesn't feel exploitive and horrible, besides just throwing out what's good?
Mhm.
So I guess that's the one of the things that I find just kind of like meditating on sometimes, trying to
Mhm.
like figure like, okay, if I'm maybe more than halfway through my career, like what is the next phase of it? Hopefully I'll be
Yeah.
doing something that's like, somewhat helpful and interesting.
Well, I think it always is. I mean, and even we haven't really addressed it outright, but I think even just being just in this day and age, it almost feels not like. I think I battle with this where I go, is it even worth calling out, a woman in music, a woman at a C-level position in the music industry? I think it's still to be celebrated. It's still to be called out. It's still the thing, you know what I mean, that needs to be the light shined on it, because it works as an example to younger generations, and also just to the overall patriarchy that continues to
Yeah.
exist. As much as I want to believe in, or as much as I see the progress and progress is made, but it's not anywhere near equity, or any
Right.
kind of form that really works culturally here in America, at least, I
Right.
can kind of say. So
Yep.
I think, you know what I mean, that the role that you've served in on and off stage has been hugely influential, and I don't know if what your perspective is on that, or how do you see that, or how much of that time, if it's even time
Well,
you spend you know looking at that.
I feel like, I mean, first of all, thank you.
Mm.
That's a very kind thing to say. I, I feel like part of my motivation throughout my work life in this, or like post, parental dependency life or whatever, has been, and especially having realized as an original spark of, action, was there simply aren't enough women doing things. The ones that are doing things aren't recognized enough.
Mhm.
So let's work on the math problem that is, and just have more of us do things. And hopefully it's interesting, and hopefully it is compelling enough to kind of maybe do have more sparks across, that would, generate more and more success. And I feel like that has to, there's good evidence that that has happened, right?
Mhm.
There's like, there are more women making things. There are, the rock camps for girls around the world, women who are, the number one and two most stratospherically successful artists, Beyonce and Taylor Swift, are,
Yeah.
like, own their shit. They are in charge of their worlds.
Yeah.
And that is something that, like, I am inspired by, and I hope lots of other, parts of the generations are inspired by. And I feel like that's always kind of been what I've been trying to do, is just keep my head up. And things are hard sometimes, and they do not make sense, and they are like, there's no easy path, but hopefully just foraging on and carrying on and having the support. And like, one of the greatest gifts in my life has been that I do come from a community that, even though we might not agree on every slice of every issue of how to navigate life, is pretty supportive. And even if you might question a decision, or I've had my decisions questioned, or my choices, um I really know that, like, I've got most of the people that have been with me along the way have my back, and vice versa. That's massive, and I feel like that's part of being a punk more than anything. Like, so it's funny to, when I talk to people in my corporate life, they're like, what do you mean by, one of my colleagues, what do you mean by sort of, he's a punker? I was like, I don't know what I mean, but my people know what I mean.
Yeah. Oh, it's so funny. Yeah, well, I think that
Yeah.
that's it. It's really one of those things. It's such a grassroots indoctrination into, and just the fundamentals of community, and just valuing
Yeah.
community, and that sort of thing of, like, if this is only good for one person or one party, it doesn't really work. You know what I mean? I wouldn't necessarily say
Yeah.
that it's exploitation. There's lots of colors
Right.
and language that can kind of go around with that, but the general idea being, well, the band's got to get paid. The venue's got to get paid. You inherently understand, like, and the drummer
Yeah.
makes as much as the singer. Guess what? Like, they didn't write
Right.
the lyrics, but they should still be making the, at the end of the day, if there was 4 people on stage, there's 4 people getting paid. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's the more or less, how we did things. And if, like, one person wants to quit the band, a lot of times, bands used to break up all the time because one person didn't want to be in the band anymore, and you started another band. It wasn't,
Right.
they weren't,
Right.
the personalities weren't indispensable. And so that kind of inherent value of the community and the people and your peers, I think, is something that,
Yeah.
as the nuance gets sharpened, you can still understand, respect, like, but what about this guy? What about this gal? Like, what about all these people that are here? We need to, like, we can't just, at least that's how I find it within myself. There's times when I'm working
Yeah.
at a thing, I'm like, I don't care. I don't care if they're the roadie. They're eating first. I don't care if there's something. It's like, there's only so much food to go
Well,
around. I don't
exactly.
deserve to eat before anyone else deserves to eat. Like, we're all going to eat, and I'd rather
I'm
everybody else get
sure
fed first, because we got to, like, make this
I'm
work.
sure you're very generous in how
You
you
know,
approach that
well, you
too,
know how
which
it
is
is.
really awesome.
Because
Yeah.
but that's part of it too, of being a multi hyphenate, is we've all worn the different hats at the different times. And just
Yeah.
because, somebody's name's on the bill or somebody's name's on the flyer, you know, how it is. It's that kind of thing of, like,
Yeah.
we've all done those roles. And I love, that's one of the things, as I get older and I'm able to help other bands, or I'm able to do other things. It's like, I enjoy seeing the success of others. You know what I mean? The others' success doesn't take away from mine. And I can kind of, and it's,
I
when
think
to play
that's I
their role. Yeah.
It doesn't mean that we're not human and we don't have some, like, envy sometimes, or
Sure.
like, oh, that looks like it's so easy, but 100%. Like, I mean, I couldn't be. I'm like, my heart is soaring for Kathleen's book launch.
Oh my God, right?
I
How
mean,
beautiful.
she has
That New York
her
Times review was
book coming out
amazing.
in a couple
Yeah.
weeks, and it's like, it's so wildly anticipated. It's going to be so successful, and it's so validating. Like, it literally gives me, like, a little bit of verklempt vibe tears when I think about it, because I mean, it's not an easy story. It has not been an easy road. Sure, she's got lots of nice, moments here and there. And, like, overall, I think what she's showing is that she's a survivor and has, accomplished a tremendous amount with her talent, her drive, and, the encouragement of her community. And so I just can't wait to see, that, because it's like a different era um, of acknowledgement.
Yeah.
and validation. And it's like so exciting.
And it's beautiful too, because I mean, this generation's story has not yet really been written. The story's not over.
Right.
Which I think is
Right.
so interesting because we've seen, you know, for better or worse, Paul McCartney, the Rolling Stones, they're still out there playing, but there's you save one or two pages, but the pretty much you can start to close the book on some of these legendary artists. But
Right.
you know what I mean. But
Right.
I don't think we're going to add another chapter to any of these stories. Whereas I do feel with the bands and the artists from the 80s and 90s, certainly, I mean, there's still more to be told in the life story and the great creative work. There's still more yet to be done. So
Yep.
it's exciting. Well, thank you so much for spending this time. We definitely
Thank you,
ran through a
Randy, for
lot. Yeah.
asking.
Where can
Real,
people follow you and or where
I'm on Instagram and LinkedIn because I'm like a weird business
because you're a
person.
badass boss.
And it's
Yeah.
Molly D Neuman on Instagram, and suffer through some pictures of my dogs and my kid and me. Although now that she's older, I'm only supposed to post things that she approves, and I assume that's going to be less and less. So
yes.
I'm getting
Yeah,
I'm getting used to that.
I'm there
So.
too. And then for the band, are there more shows, more tours? Yeah.
We're playing in LA in a couple of weeks at the Lodge Room, which is exciting. And then we're going to play at Punk Rock Bowling that weekend in Vegas. And then we're playing Pitchfork Fest.
Great.
In July.
And how do people follow
That's it for now.
Bratmobile? How do people find more info about Bratmobile?
On Instagram is our basically our website right now, because in between all the other things, I've tried to be a web developer, and that's one of my failures.
No
so
fun.
yeah.
What's the handle? What's the handle for the Bratmobile official?
It's the real Bratmobile.
Okay. Like the real Ghostbusters, the real Bratmobile. Amazing. Yeah. And everyone, I think DistroKid is an official sponsor of the show, but I will give a shout out to CD Baby. Everybody go, if you're curious about getting your own music online, DistroKid is one option. CD Baby is another option. And
there's a lot of that's great. I mean, and we're friends,
Yeah.
The world is too small
Yeah.
for us not to be sort of, friendly competitors
Yes.
at this point. So, like I'm in touch with a lot of the people over there. Some of them have been colleagues before. So it's, I definitely, that's great.
Yep. Sound Exchange. There's all kinds of great stuff we could promote, but yeah, we'll keep it to, Bratmobile. Go see you guys out on the road. And thank you so much. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you, Randy.
Whoa, right? How awesome is Molly? Such a rad story. I mean, just being there, and really making a difference and really doing the good work and fighting the good fight. And so stoked. It's fascinating. I think about all those different, times in her life when she was talking about if I went this way, if I went that way, if I would have worked in the warehouse and focused on being a drummer versus getting in there and rolling her sleeves up and really running the label and helping out bands. But I think, all things happen the way they're supposed to. I think Molly really was one of those people who's always been so helpful and so community minded and really just, wanting the best for her community and wanting the best for people and providing those resources and means to to get the message out there, to get the bands out there and to get them in front of as many ears as possible. And I think that's what she's still doing now. I think we went into all the nuanced stuff. I'm sure there was definitely stuff that was over my head, but just, I think if anything, the takeaway of just what an interesting, new, weird world it is, where there is a type of democratization in digital media and that it's all out there. Everyone has a voice. You can use CD Baby, you can use DistroKid to get your music up and out there. But then, there's the admin side, from someone like in her position, just what does it cost to run all those things, things like Bandcamp, all these different places, you can get the money, you can get the music out there, but who's collecting the money and who's keeping track of it all? And at what point does it tip over into like, what am I doing? I think ultimately at the end of the day, it really is just about having your voice heard and having a means of communication, and the less gatekeepers there are to that, or at least ways of, you know, just getting your message out there. And I think ultimately with all the critiques and things and, you know, brainwashing, espionage, conspiratorial bents of social media, there really is a sense and a place and a welcome for all voices, for a lot of voices, at least I should say. You know, I think it boggles the mind, right? I mean, everyone's shouting into the void, and sometimes the void shouts back. Sometimes you find an audience, or people find you, and it's fascinating. So I'm cautiously optimistic, I should say, or ecstatically nihilistic, depending on the day, in terms of the future of music and everything that's happened. But really, you know, I think through hearing stories like Molly's, it really does just hammer home that thing of like, you just got to go out there and have fun with your friends and just make the music and just do the work, put out your voice, put out the creative message that you have, and then worry about it all later as things come in, and you can take time to sort it out and figure it out there. But really the push is to be heard, to be seen, to get your voice in front of as many people as you can, you know. And so I really appreciate Molly taking the time to come out or come on the show and share her story. So I will see everybody on Monday with another Hyphenate. And thank you again, Molly. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And thank you, DistroKid. Go use that code VIP/Hyphenate for I don't know, what is it, 20% off something. I got to record another commercial at some point. I keep running the same old one. Anyway, all right. Have a good one. See you later. Bye.
You know, CDs were high margin items, you know, retailing for between 13 and $20, but it was $3 to make them.